Hi, this is Lizette Russo, and I'm going to talk about what I learned throughout the completion of the PBIS module. I will review the different tiers of support, share classroom management tips, as well as keys to the successful implementation of PBIS and intervention strategies in the three tiers. PBIS, or Positive Behavioral Interventions and Supports, is designed to improve the outcomes for all students. It is implemented school-wide and is a multi-tiered, data-driven system of providing behavior interventions and supports to students. What is Tier 1? The goal of PBIS is to teach appropriate behavior and pro-social skills to all students in order to prevent unwanted behaviors. It focuses on acknowledging students for what they are doing right and intervening early when problems arise. How is Tier 1 implemented? The positive stated, easy to remember expectations should link the school-wide expectations to those of the classroom. They should be used throughout the school in all school settings by 90% or more of all school teachers and staff. A token system designed and managed by the Tier 1 team is used to reward students' positive behaviors, while a tiered system of support uses research-based, data-driven interventions to improve problem behaviors. Who is involved in Tier 1 supports? The Tier 1 team, comprised of a coordinator, administrator, family members, and teachers, meets monthly to decide how to teach expectations and behaviors and acknowledge students who demonstrate pro-social behaviors. They are also in charge of soliciting the input of families on a yearly basis. They also evaluate how well the school as a whole implements the system and can use the Tiered Fidelity Inventory, or TFI, as a tool for doing so. Thinking about how PBIS looks in the classroom level begins with setting clear rules and expectations for behavior. Students can participate in the creation of a class contract that employs their own language. Positive behaviors should be acknowledged with verbal praise and celebrated according to the reward system established by the Tier 1 team. Students can be encouraged to take ownership of their emotional well-being and behavior through the use of self-checks, such as rating their mood on a scale of 1 to 5 at the beginning of each day. Good classroom management requires what one of my mentors once called with-itness. It involves arranging the classroom so that student engagement is easy to assess, using continuous movement throughout the classroom to keep students on task, and using whole class strategies such as positive narration, which highlights students who are on task, and individual strategies such as whispering to support off-task students without embarrassment. The use of nonverbal cues is also a really useful, non-disruptive way to help get off-task students back on track. Effective lesson design is also an important part of classroom management. Students are better behaved when they can handle the academic task at hand. Using competition can improve student engagement, and the use of digital tools such as Class Dojo can make reward systems and behavior management more a part of students' home lives as well. Moving on to Tier 2. For students who are at risk for developing behavior problems, Tier 2 supports may be necessary. They are designed to get students the help they need to be successful. It has demonstrated positive effects for 67% of referred students. How are Tier 2 supports implemented? Students participate in groups of 10 or more and learn social skills, self-management, and access academic supports. Student buy-in is very important, as is their continuous monitoring by the Tier 2 team. Who is involved in Tier 2 supports? The Tier 2 team is comprised of a coordinator, an administrator, a behavior specialist, and a classroom teacher. It's responsible for establishing the systems and practices of support and intervention. They oversee implementation and use data to monitor student progress. The behavior specialist helps identify the function of behavior or the underlying reasons why the student misbehaves. This information is then used to create interventions to improve behavior and overall academic success. Students receive Tier 2 interventions according to a clearly defined and methodical process that uses multiple techniques to assess need as outlined by the Tier 2 team. Criteria for participation include office discipline referrals, screening scores, teacher input, parent and support services input, and formative assessments. At this time, I'd like to mention a few classroom do's and don'ts for working with the kinds of students who are most likely to receive Tier 2 supports. When working with agitated students, there are a few things to keep in mind. Overall, you want to convey a sense of safety, calm, receptiveness, and respect. You should limit the number of adults involved to avoid confusion and allow the student to have as much personal space as he or she needs. Keep your language simple and direct, as it can be hard for an agitated student to attend and comprehend. You may coach the student to take responsibility for his or her actions if possible, but should strive to reassure the student, letting him or her know that you have taken his or her feelings into account. Since an agitated student's fight or flight response is engaged, it is not recommended to block escape routes. Since you want to appear receptive to the student's needs, closed body language, such as folded arms, and negative language and reprimands are also not recommended. Tier 3 supports are designed to address the 1 to 5% of students who exhibit the most egregious behavior problems. They have been proven to be effective with students with disabilities as well as students without a diagnostic label. How Tier 3 works. At the Tier 3 intervention level, students' natural support systems, such as family members and people from their social networks, are tapped to provide wraparound supports. Careful thought is given to ensuring that the interventions applied take the student's race, ethnicity, culture, learning history, and conversational language into account. Who's involved with Tier 3 interventions? The multidisciplinary team, comprised of an administrator and a behavior representative, are responsible for ensuring that the student is supported by data-based interventions, as well as determining whether the student may be eligible for additional resources. This team is also responsible for ensuring that the supports are implemented as intended. At the Tier 3 level, each student has his or her own team who seeks to implement, monitor, and assess interventions unique to that student. The goal of Tier 3 interventions is always to transition to less intensive interventions as the student's behavior improves. An essential component of Tier 3 interventions is the functional behavioral assessment. The purpose of this assessment is to determine the factors underlying a student's behavior problems. In order to make this determination, the ABC model is employed. The antecedent is the situation, action, or event that immediately precedes a behavior. The behavior itself must be an observable or a measurable act. The consequence is a response, action, or event that immediately follows a behavior. The Functional Behavioral Assessment, or FBA, is comprised of a series of specific steps that are taken to determine the cause of a behavior, design a targeted intervention to effectively address it, and evaluate the effectiveness of the intervention applied. During Step 1, as a teacher attempts to identify and replace a problem behavior, she should also reinforce a more acceptable alternative. During Step 2, the teacher should record when, where, how long, and how frequently a target behavior occurs. During Step 3, the teacher uses direct observations to collect baseline data about a target behavior, noting the setting and time of day in which the behavior took place. During Step 4, the team determines why the problem behavior is happening and identifies a reinforcing replacement behavior that serves the same function as the problem behavior. It should be kept in mind that problem behaviors are usually carried out either to gain a desirable thing or outcome or to avoid an unpleasant thing or outcome. During step 5, it is important to ensure that the intervention is socially valid and socially acceptable. It is also important to ensure that the teacher has been implementing the interventions in the way they were planned. During step 6, it is important to remember that interventions must occur every day, that it may take time before the student's behavior shows improvement, and that student buy-in is crucial to success. At the evaluation phase, intervention data and baseline data are compared in order to determine how well the plan is working. Essential changes are made in procedures and implementation fidelity is again evaluated. Some keys to success. According to the work of Freeman and Simonson, there are a few key factors that contribute to the overall success of PBIS implementation. Overall, administration prioritization, both at the district and school-wide level, are key, as is practical support for teachers' implementation of the system through explicit training, continuous coaching, and data-based performance feedback. According to the work of Freeman and Simonson, the features of successful PBIS implementation involve the establishment of a clear action plan regarding the system practices, enthusiastic and school-wide implementation that is both supported by embedded professional development and sustained by acknowledgement of staff for their hard work. Takeaways. Positive behavior is essential to school success. Disruptive classroom behaviors make teaching and learning difficult, to say the least. I learned a lot about the potential for PBIS to avoid negative student behaviors by rewarding positive ones, and to meet behavior problems with targeted, data-driven solutions. In the end, I feel that staff buy-in is crucial to making PBIS systems in schools work. Part of the way to achieve buy-in is by providing excellent, embedded, and continuous training and coaching. Furthermore, teachers need to feel supported in their endeavors to improve student behavior, and as Freeman and Simonson noted, they should be acknowledged for doing so. Throughout this module, I've learned that the implementation of a PBIS system is a complex undertaking, but the potential for student benefits makes it worth doing.